Hello, Neil here with NC Software. We're going to take another look at Logbook Pro version 2, and this time we're going to go over the settings. So let's take a look at the bottom section of the home screen, and we're going to tap Settings, and we'll go through each one of these areas. The first, or the top item, is the Synchronization settings. Now you'll see this is our ID and username that we entered in the Getting Started video that we paired up with our MySync portal. You can get this information from logbookpro.com/sync. There are a few settings available, a few preferences for synchronization. We have sync on start and sync on exit. Pretty straightforward. When you start your application, if there is data to sync and an internet connection available, it will synchronize automatically. You will see a green bar at the top, fade in, fade out during the synchronization process. Sync on exit. When you tap the home screen at the bottom of the device and exit the application, it will synchronize, assuming the internet connection is available. There will be no feedback to you that the synchronization did occur. It happens very fast, typically under a second. Then there's an option, sync pending flights. Typically pending flights that have not been flown, that are in your flight log section of the device, typically do not get synced because the information is not updated, is not accurate, etc. However, you can turn this on if you want to sync pending flights back to Logbook Pro PC Edition so that your reports that are generated by the PC Edition and brought back to the device will reflect future flying. This is typically for our 121, 135 folks that need to see what kind of hours they're looking at based on the trips that have been imported or any flights that have been entered for future flying. So you can sync pending flights if optioned on. The last option in the synchronization section is purge synced data. Data on the device serves no purpose. Once it's synchronized and it's sent to the PC, that's where the data is actually utilized for generating reports, log analysis, etc., statistics. So if you don't want to keep anything on the device, you can actually have the device purge it once it is sent to the MySync portal. So that is an option for you. You can manually purge by tapping the little trash can purge buttons either on the home screen top right or the individual data areas bottom left. So pretty straightforward. Sync start and exit are on by default. The sync pending flights is off if you want to use it. And then purge sync data is an option available to you as well. The flight log section, excuse me. You can set the UI clocks, the out, off, on, in, or out, take off, land, in times to use Zulu, UTC, or GMT if you so desire. It is recommended that for pilots that are crossing time zones, such as airline pilots or anybody that's doing a cross-country across a time zone, that you do enter your UI times in a single time zone. This will allow the duration calculation to properly calculate as you're in a consistent time zone. Autofill occurs on the device, so if we have, in this case we have Cessna 182 is our aircraft type we're using for the demo. If we want it to have pilot and command and cross-country automatically populated when I enter a duration, you can configure that information in the options autofill area of Logbook Pro PC Edition, and then you can have that actually, it's turned on by default, so you can turn it off if you don't want to use it, but pretty nice feature where it will automatically populate your information. Then we have new flight auto populate. Logbook Pro remembers your last entries and remembers the last dates you entered, the last aircraft, the last ident, and as well as custom texts, and we'll talk about route in a second. So for example, we're always flying the Cessna 182, and we have a list of different aircraft. When we go to add a new flight, it will automatically put Cessna 182 in for us. Same thing with the ident. Maybe you own your own aircraft, you fly the same thing all the time, the same aircraft. So Logbook Pro can actually pre-populate those fields with a new flight log entry for you based on what you used on your previous flight log entry. So in the case of the date, it will enter the last date. Maybe you're backlogging 3 years ago. You would rather have the date be closer. You may not use the exact date for every flight, but maybe you're entering 1 Jan 2006 and you're going to go to 2 Jan 2006, having it use the last date, you'd only have to increment by 1 day versus having to scroll the date pickers back 4 years and find the month, etc. So you might want to have the recall last date set to on, and then you can just make this slight offset from your last flight log entry. That'll save you some time. And like I mentioned, recall custom text. So if you have a particular crew member that you fly with all the time and you want to track the crew names, you can have that custom text pre-populate with the same name that you used last time, the same value. Now the route options, a little more advanced. We have recall last route, same as applies as above. So if you're flying local all the time, you can have it automatically put in local. Or if you fly the same legs, etc., then you can recall the last route. Now we have the option start with the last fix. And let me show you how that works. Let's actually go into a flight. I'm going to go ahead and do a purge and just get everything out of here. Now let's start a new flight. And in this case, let's go to Dallas. All right, so we're flying KRIC to KDFW. Now we have our setting that's going to recall the last route. We also have start with the last fix. So after I save this flight, Logbook Pro knows that KDFW is my last fix of the prior route. So let's add a landing. Yeah, quick flight to Dallas. So let's create a new flight, and you can see that it automatically populated with the, well, let's make it, I'll do that. Oops. All right, and then a new flight. So we should start with LAX. And there you have it. And it automatically appends a hyphen. So all you have to do is type in the next fix, and that'll save you some time. So that's what the start with last fix option will do for you. It identifies the last fix of the prior route and makes that the starting fix of your next flight log entry. Now, you've probably seen me in prior videos tap that little calculator button on the right side of the duration field. It's also on the right side of the simulator field. You can do automatic duration or sim calculations, and you can have it calculate from your takeoff to landing time or your out to in time, or you can set to none or just not tap the calculator, but you can disable the calculator button by setting it to none. So for those of you that do out to in, make sure you come to the settings flight log, change it to out to in, and that's what the values that'll be used to calculate your duration. In a previous video, I showed you that when entering the out, off, on, in times, or out, takeoff, land, in times, it will pre-populate your takeoff time 15 minutes after your out time, your landing time 1 hour or 60 minutes after your takeoff time, and then your in time 15 minutes after your landing time. So you can change these values. Maybe out to takeoff, you only want 5 minutes, for example. So you can set that as desired. And then the last option, or the last setting within the settings flight log area, is the ability to turn off fields you don't want to show. Maybe you don't enter out and in times. If you're a private pilot, you don't deal with out and in like airline pilots do. Maybe you don't enter takeoff and landing times. You don't fly your deal with simulator. You're not receiving any instructor time. You're not an instructor given any instruction. You're not an examiner. So we can really declutter the display. I don't fly approaches. I don't do cost and per diem. And we can turn off the options customary. We have custom time, custom yes, no. We can actually turn those sections off if we don't want them. Remember, I do have custom, if you saw the scheduling reporter video, we do have custom text. So let's go to the flight section now. And let's go to flights and go to new flight, and you'll see we don't have our takeoff and landings, our out and in times. We don't have simulator, and that's it. And our custom fields aren't there. Our per diem and cost is not there. So you can really make the flight log area not have any extra fields that you don't use. Oh, let's go to settings, flight log, and then config display. So you can turn all the fields off you don't use and make only the field that you use appear, and just to help you enter flights even more quickly. The schedule importer settings I discussed in the schedule importer video, so please take a look at that, and I won't waste time duplicating that information here. If you have iOS 4 installed on your iPhone, iPod Touch, or iPad, you have calendar integration available to you. The calendar integration can be turned off if you don't want to use it. As in the data entry video, I showed you how you can actually option any type of new item that you add. You can check the bypass calendar checkbox at the bottom of the new item, and it will not get saved to the calendar if you have bypass calendar checked. Otherwise, any new item that you save will in fact be added to your calendar. Anything that's in the future will have a reminder set. As you can see here, this note on the bottom, reminders are only set on future events. So typically when you're entering certificates or ratings, you're not going to see a reminder because it either occurred today or you're entering it from something in the past. Now your history, you might enter a medical today or last month or whatever, but the due date or the expiration of that history item is in the future. When you create a history item, you're going to get two entries put on the calendar, one for when the history event was accomplished, and the second event will be created when the history event expires. And since that expiration is in the future, your reminder interval will be used and the reminder will be set. All-day events, such as certificates and ratings, will have a 24-hour reminder appear. If it's a specific time event, such as history, for example, will have a 24-hour reminder set on it if you have enable reminders to on, because there's no specific time for that event. Now, a flight that has time, then we'll use the reminder value. The default is 2 hours, so you can change it to 240, 120, 60, etc. 30 minutes, 15 minutes. Just put in the number of minutes you want for your reminder interval, for your warning. The last option on the calendar settings area is you can actually choose which calendar to use. In some cases, you'll have multiple calendars, and if you have Gmail, where the iPhone's pretty neat, where you can bring in third-party calendars such as Gmail, Yahoo, etc. So you can choose which calendar you want the app to actually write the events to. This is also useful because as a pilot, maybe you want a completely separate calendar just for your flying. You don't want to clutter it with your personal information. So you can create a new calendar within the device or on your computer and within iTunes, etc. And add a new calendar or bring in your Gmail calendar. Create a Gmail calendar just for flying as a suggestion. And then you can actually choose that specific calendar, and Logbook Pro will only write the events to the calendar you specify. Lock to portrait, this only applies to the iPhone and iPod Touch. The iPad does not have this capability. You can actually lock the iPad either with the hardware switch. If you're using iOS 3 or iOS 4, you have to, it's a little more complicated. There is a KB article on our website on how to lock the orientation on the iPad. It's a software change now in iOS 4. But if we have lock to portrait on, turn to the home screen to save it, you can see that the orientation actually does not change when I rotate the device. So if we turn that off, then the orientation will change. So for whatever reason you want to lock the orientation, maybe who knows what your reason may be, you can do that with the lock to portrait option. A new feature in Logbook Pro version 2 over our version 1 app is the ability to secure the application with a password. So we're going to just type in test for our password, and then let's exit the application. All right, so anyways, we entered the password for password and confirm. They do have to match. And let's go ahead and exit. And now the application is actually suspended. Presently, we do not prompt for password on resume. This is being considered for a future release, of course, with an option, prompt on resume, or prompt password on resume type of thing. But presently, the password is not going to appear or be required just to resume the app. I don't want to harass you with password every time. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove the app from suspended state. And you do that by double tapping the home button. This brings up a shelf, if you will, a section on the bottom that will show all suspended apps, assuming you're using iOS 4. And then I press and hold the app icon, and then you'll see a red minus appear. Tap the red minus. If it's a white X, do not tap that. That will delete the app. All right, so again, we just double tap the home button, press and hold, and then the red minus. So now what we're going to do is do what I call a cold start of the application. It's not in suspended state. We're going to launch it, and just like you did when you initially installed it. And this time we're going to get prompted for a password. All right, so if you want to prevent your app from being used without entering a password, make sure after you close the app you do remove it from suspended state, and then a password is required. And then tap login on the top right. Now to clear that password, all we have to do is just tap in the password field, because anytime you tap in the field it's going to clear and have you reset a password. All right, so all you have to do is tap to clear it. You do not have to clear the confirm, and the password will be removed. All right, let's come back into settings, and you see there is no password. Okay, the app button counter. That is the let's add a flight to our certificate. All right, we have 2 flights already in. All right, so I'll show you how this works. The app button counter is a little red counter on the top right of the application button or the icon to launch the app. All right, so we're going to change this to flights, and we're going to see the count of flights on the top right of the application icon. All right, so you can set that to your count of certificates, rating, history, or flights. Or if you don't like that little counter to appear, you can turn it off. So we'll leave it to flights for this example. The next feature setting, and the count typically is the total number of items on the device for the section, so the total number of flights. Well, maybe you only want it to show the count of items that have not been synced. So in this case, we're not going to see any, so we're not going to include synced. Or let's make one. Let's just save it. So we have one that's been synced, one that has not been synced. So in this case, we're going to see a 1 appear. Oh, let's see what I did here. Flights, include synced, include. Oh, because I've got automatic sync turned on, so let's turn off the automatic sync because it synced it on close. Turn off our sync. Let's go back and do this again. So we have one that's synced, one that's not synced, and when we close the app this time, it is not going to sync on exit, so we'll see the 1 appear. Now if we change that button counter, flights, to include synced, it will be back to a 2. And then the last item is the include pending flights. As it says on the bottom, this only applies to the flight section. So if we have pending flights on the device, future flights, the counter will reflect that if we are including pending. So pretty straightforward on the settings. Now let me show you the place to learn more. Let's go to our website, and if you just type in docs, whoops, I'm in all caps, docs iPhone, that'll take you into the iPhone documentation. So you can expand the node here, which shows you the getting started guide, goes through exactly what to do to initialize your device, requirements, and then you see the settings is broken down just as we just talked about. Synchronization settings, flight log settings. All right, so you can review all the documentation on the settings, data entry. So take a look at the documentation to get an even better feel for everything. And like I said, that's just logbookpro.com or nc-software.com/docs/iPhone. This concludes the video on the settings. If you have any questions about any use of this application, please give us a shout at either sales or support at nc-software.com. And we thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoy our Logbook Pro software for your PC as well as your iPhone or iPad. Have a great day.